Good morning. Welcome to the No Way Jose podcast. It's March 12th. Was it Wednesday? No, Thursday. Thursday. I am your host, Jose Galison. You're watching the No Way Jose podcast. This is the morning dump. I think I might have just said that. I don't know what's going on in my brain today. But you guys see No Kitty of the Day today, and you know what that means. We have a guest. We have Kyle Anzalone joining us. Now, if you like seeing my hot takes Monday through Friday around 11 a.m. Eastern, when we make it, like we did today, finally, or if you just like seeing the Kitty of the Day, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell for notifications. We'll see you in the show.
Beautiful thing, right now.
Rise and shine, it's a beautiful day.
About a third of the building has been blown away.
This is the bridge to white lights.
Our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad.
Crazy evil.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you guys are having a great, productive morning. If not, we're going to get into it. We have joining us today Kyle Anzalone. As always, we'll start off the show today with a little Gen Pop type content, icebreaker type stuff, fun, funny. Then we'll get into, normally we just do kind of like a little 30-minute stint on foreign policy. We're breaking up into two full main segments today. We're doing Iran insanity and world at war. Those kind of speak for themselves. Then we'll get into Epstein file hackers for our final segment of the day, probably after Kyle leaves. So we might enter back into the chat. Normally we have guests. We don't dilly-dally in the chat, but maybe once Kyle leaves, we'll pop in the chat. So a little casual reminder, if you guys do want to get through, I do try to give everybody an obligatory good morning. Considering I won't jump into the chat till like an hour deep, I probably won't do that today. That'd be a lot of good mornings all at once. But if you do want to get my attention, you can always drop a super chat, leave a little hello. Otherwise, catch my interest. Say something interesting in the chat, and we will bring it up. But with that, Kyle, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show. Although, due to the fact that you're here, it's because shit's popping off in the world. So it's kind of a... while you're fun, it's not cool having you here.
Yeah, I feel that way. Like yesterday when I talked to Matt Ho, he's a great guy. Like, I love talking to Matt. He's so knowledgeable, but what we're talking about is so dark. It takes a little bit of the fun out of the conversation. But anytime you get taught to friends, it is a good reminder of like, this shit is worth doing. Right, to try to take on the war state and bring about a more rational policy. So, we could keep doing all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully, maybe one day there'll be no war, and we'll have to, I don't know what you'll talk about, but we'll bring you on for other stuff. I don't know, we'll find out about the hobbies we never knew you had or something. Yeah, but with that, let's get right into the icebreaker stuff, a little goofy, a little fun. Although it ties into political world, apparently Trump gave Jake Paul a resounding endorsement for political office, although I don't think he's actually running for anything. So, but let's watch this. I don't know what really is to be said about this, but this is the Gen Pop slop you come here for in our opening segment. So this is Jake Paul and the President of the United States, Donald Trump.
God is with us. I know He wants us on the right side of history, and everyone here has to do their part. And God's got us. Trump's got us. God bless. Love you, Kentucky.
No, he's a great guy. He's a courageous guy and a talented guy. He's a hell of a fighter, too, by the way. And I just want to say, I'm going to make a prediction that you will be, in the not-too-distant future, running for political office. Okay? And you have my complete and total endorsement, okay? No, that's what we want. He's an incredible guy. A lot of courage and smarts.
But wait, there's more. They got a little fun little TikTok dance in. As the world is in tumult, we can count on Trump to bring a smile to our downtrodden faces with his goofy little signature dance. Here he is with Jake Paul. Okay, I mean, nothing too substantive here, but I know it's interesting. I do find it funny some of the people have been elevated by this guy. So I don't know if you actually have any conversation to add here, Kyle. It's just goofy. It's just goofy to see. I didn't watch this thing, admittedly, so I doubt you did either. But I know between him and like pushing like Conor McGregor's of the world and then the Pete Hegseths of the world. Like, I don't know, it does seem to be there's a little bit of a pattern. Not that I have any really too strong opinions on Jake Paul. Who knows? Maybe you're a Jake Paul fan. I don't know, Kyle. But it just does seem there's a certain type that he's trying to... I've seen people floating around that's almost like this. I had Matt Wolfson on the show before, and he's kind of pushed this theory of like they're kind of pushing this new supremacist notion. And like maybe there's some sort of aspect of this could be like some new great white hope vibe that they're trying to push or something. Like to speak to the everyman, the every white man, But although I gotta say, as someone I feel like who identifies pretty well with that demographic, I feel like they're missing the mark. Far be it, while I think toxic masculinity is a gay thing to say, generally speaking, these people that I'm talking about are really actually kind of a perfect example of that. And I'm someone that you would look at and think I'm probably toxic masculine, a toxic masculine or whatever. These are just kind of retards that I don't know, like to kill things, basically. Not a whole lot going on in their heads. I don't know. So I don't really feel like there's someone that everyman. And I think even the everyman sees them as like lol cows, LOL cows. So I don't know. What do you think? I mean, is there anything to be said here? Am I really just grasping to talk something to talk about here, or what do you think, or is this just something to laugh about?
No, I mean, I think it's mostly something to laugh about. I guess there are maybe a couple more interesting aspects here. I've seen a little bit of Jake Paul's boxing, and he's actually a better fighter than I kind of assumed he would be for a guy who I think his main thing is just like looking good and having fun on YouTube, right? Like that's his deal. And it turns out like he actually is somewhat tough and can box. I think Matt Wolfson, who I like a lot, I've had him on my show a couple times. He's a great researcher and writer. I think he probably misses the mark here a little bit.
Oh, to be clear, I'm not saying he said that. To be clear, I'm not saying. I'm saying
okay.
Like he had a recent piece where he talked about this idea of the future being like as if the powers that be are pushing certain, for example, white supremacy. But although it's going to be, it's like we kind of talk about, it's almost be like this new age version where it won't be maybe as on its face. Explicitly white supremacist, but then you have like the Indian supremacy and then obviously like the Jewish supremacy. And like they're kind of pretending to be a meritocracy, but like in a weird collectivist way, because it's just like, oh, Jews do so great because, we do so well and blah, 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 blah. Like, but at the same time, there's this weird collectivist mindset and it kind of leaks into the halls of power. And it's becoming not just the Zionists, it's becoming other demographics that are filling this role in a similar such way. One of which he kind of theorizes, kind of almost like a reaction to the woke, I guess, if you could say. Like let's get our some of our great white saviors in there type deal. Like so that's almost like the backlash, and that's kind of like the angle they're going for, and that way they can kind of like talk about American supremacy would be the better way to put it than white supremacy.
I mean, I'm sure to some degree there is that going on. I think the best example of that might be replacing something Q Brown, I forget his first name, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff with Raising Cane, as Trump likes to call him. But I think, when you look at like Paul and Hegseth and people like Bondi and Noam and Caroline Leavitt, Trump is in the percentage of the population, I guess, that's easily charmed by attractive people, right? Like he likes to surround himself with attractive men and women. I think that's where the Jake Paul thing comes from. I know at this rally he was shitting on Thomas Massey too, so that was disappointing to see. And I think this is part of the dynamic where Trump has kind of run out of people to promote and to be allies with. So he's now promoting Jake Paul and running to Jake Paul because he's turned his back on a lot of the true America firsters, and you got to take a pretty boy who doesn't really understand politics and just personally likes Donald Trump and use him as a prop now, the same way, Turning Points USA and the Trump administration are using Nicki Minaj, right? Like it's just the look that they like, and people who just don't have the intelligence and depth to realize that not only is Trump like not liberal and to dislike him for that reason, but he's also not a conservative or Republican. He's not America first, and the Republicans dislike him for that reason. The other thing I'll mention here, I do think Trump is in a state of pretty significant cognitive decline, where not only is he not as sharp as he was in 2016, and look, in 2016 I found Trump legitimately funny. Like I thought like he had a lot of really great zingers. He was sharp on his feet, and that has turned into just like kind of angry reactions, right? Where he's just, he's not being funny, he's just being mean. And I think that's a sign of Trump's cognitive decline. And you also see him just saying things like, Rubio and Witkoff and Kushner convinced him to go to war in the Middle East. But he doesn't seem to be able to ask like substantive follow-up questions. Like people just give him answers. And what we're getting from Trump now is like, his understanding of what Pete Hegseth or Marco Rubio told him. So, he was talking about the Tomahawk missile. A Tomahawk missile hit a girls' school in Iran, killed like 150 children and some other people as well. Horrific thing to have happened. And rather than either just like denying that it happened, Trump was twice said that the Tomahawk missile could have been fired by Iran, saying that a lot of countries had Tomahawk missiles. Iran has Tomahawk missiles. They want to have more. And
like three, right?
Right. That Pete Hegseth probably told Trump, we don't know what happened. It's under investigation. Other countries have Tomahawk missiles. And in Donald Trump's mind, he turned that into this idea that Iran fired the Tomahawk missile. So this is not a man who is at or near the top of his cognitive game.
Yeah, as I've repeated, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember who I heard this from or where I heard it from, but I think it's just U.S., Britain, and Australia that have them, right? So like maybe some people have some hidden somewhere or somehow got their hands on one. Although I feel like someone would know about that. But that's my understanding. It's just those three countries. I don't know if you know of any other ones. So it's not just everybody has it. So yeah. But all right, I wanted to run it by you in case you knew, because if that was bullshit, because I mean that on its face that is such a ridiculous claim. But then again, I guess he probably wouldn't know any different. All right, let's jump right into. Actually, first off, I saw a super chat. Let's address that as we swap over to sweat segments real quick. We'll do that. Maybe if someone wants to drop super chats, we'll bring those up in between segments still. So John Black says, thank you, Kyle, for visiting our little corner of the schizo influencer space, and feed Jeff and tell him a tall king said hi, and oh my god, hi, JC. Those last two sentences, Kyle, are inside jokes for our chat. Jeff is one of the kiddies of this house. JC is one of the perennial lurkers of this group chat and many other group chats. I think I see him lurking in your group chat sometimes too. Not group chat, your live chat, so your YouTube live chat. So appreciate the super chat, John Black. Appreciate the support. With that, let's go ahead and get into Iran insanity to start off. Here's Trump. He was just at an Ohio pharmaceutical plant. He had some thoughts on the war. Let's see the latest from old Donnie Boy.
You just said it is a little excursion, and you just said it is a little excursion, and you said it is a war. So which one is it?
Well, it's both. It's both. It's an excursion that will keep us out of a war. And the war is going to be, for them it's a war. For us, it's turned out to be easier than we thought.
Okay. All right. I got to remind the audience here, just because this makes it even funnier for me, is this show, generally speaking, probably like 90% plus of the things that we do on the show is stuff that I have not read or watched yet, because it's an info dump show. It's stuff I bookmark. And then this is just a stream. I hang out with you guys, and then we kind of parse through information in real time together. It's almost like me doing my homework. I'm a busy man. I don't really have time to do this, so I stream it. I'm a podcaster, so may as well monetize my learning. And so it's just funny. I see this clip, and I remember even in my head, I had a joke ready for this in my head of like, oh, I bet you, I literally was going to do what Trump just said as the joke, because he literally just did that. And I'm sure you remember as well, Kyle. He literally just gave the same exact line in regards to the old switcheroo that he pulled just, was it a day or two ago with the oil, where he kind of whiplashed the oil prices real quick, like, with we're pretty much done or whatever. I forget exactly how he said it. And then later in the day, he's like, well, we haven't won enough yet. And then somebody called him on it. He goes, well, I guess you could say both. And he just did it again here. So it's a little excursion and also a gigantic world war, I guess. So I don't. Any thoughts? I guess I'll add a little more meat in the bone before we move on. Here's another one. Here's another thing. War ending soon. Nothing left to strike in Iran from the cradle. So like other quotes from him. Yeah. I just. What do you think?
Yeah, so a few things. One, I do think it just shows the incompetence of this administration that they don't have solid talking points on how they are going to address the fact that we are at war. But at the same time, we can't be at war because Congress hasn't declared war. There's no sense that you could use the 2001 authorization for use of military force, the one written after 9/11, to go after the Iranians. And of course, the 2002 was for Iraq. And so they don't have anything. And so they kind of have it. Trump has to have it both ways, where we are decimating Iran in a way that it's a war, right? But at the same, and we're going to force them to surrender and to capitulate to American demands. But at the same time, it can't rhetorically be a war. We also see this with the Iranian nuclear program, where we destroyed their nuclear program 7-8 months ago in June, right? And it was supposed to have been devastated and take decades to recover. You know, we got everything, we got out. Boy, was that a success. It wasn't a forever war. See how much different Trump is from Joe Biden. But now we're back bombing Iran because of their nuclear program. And so here again, we have like these conflicting talking points coming out from the administration, which is Iran was completely defeated in June, but they presented so much of a threat in February that we had to go back to war. Now, I think that this is actually a pretty important admission. This was a quote that he originally gave to Axios, right? Which is Israeli propaganda. You know, I mean, Barak Ravid is a former IDF soldier, I think intelligence officer. And, you know, anything that they are writing is things that they want to write. But I think what Donald Trump was actually saying there is that the military hasn't identified other military targets to strike in Iran. And yet, Jose, Iran is still firing missiles, mining the Strait of Hormuz. Literally, the Gulf region from Iraq to Oman is burning, right? There are tankers on fire throughout the Strait of Hormuz. Oil refineries burning in Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain. I'm not sure if they did any attacks on Qatar last night, but and Israel. You know, we know less because the Israeli media is so good at cracking down and preventing the footage from getting out. But there are lots of Tel Aviv where every building will likely have to be torn down and rebuilt once this conflict is over. So this is. If they really don't have a lot of targets to hit in Iran, then that means Iran has gotten very good at hiding their missile systems, which, look, this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. While the whole idea that Ansar Allah or the Houthis in Yemen or an Iranian proxy group is overblown. However, Sana'a does have ties with Tehran. And Sana'a has been able to hide their missile launchers from the American empire for over a decade, right? Like we helped the Saudis bomb Yemen, and the Ansar Allah was firing missiles through that entire war. We helped the Israelis bomb Yemen. We've bombed Yemen since October 7th. And the Houthis are still able to fire missiles at ships in the Gulf and at Israel. So if you look at you know the area of Yemen controlled by the Houthis, Ansar Allah, is the northwest of that country, and it's mountainous. It's very similar terrain to a lot of Iran, except Iran is, I have no idea times the size, 10, 15, 20 times the size of the area that the Houthis control in Yemen. So do you really think that we'd be able to find all of Iran's missile launchers, especially when, they're probably talking with Ansar Allah, and they know what the Americans are able to find and how quickly they're able to strike it after they find it versus what they're completely unable to detect? Right, the Ansar Allah still producing missiles and drones, so Iran will find ways to continue to produce missiles and drones underground. And this, I think, shows there's a real problem from the American side of the war, that we can't identify the Iranian military sites to hit them.
And that leads perfectly into our next little bit here. Talking about boots on the ground. Boots on the ground. As I think you kind of eloquently laid out there, it sounds like, I mean, if you really are determined to make this thing happen, your only real option now at this point is boots on the ground. I mean, what else are we gonna do? We're not winning through economic warfare. If anything, we're crippling the rest of the world. That we're not really able to strike anybody. Everyone's gone to hiding. Doesn't really seem to be helping, but talks about putting troops in the ground. Here we have Max Blumenthal, Senator Blumenthal, who is a bit of a Blumenthal. He's a bit of a war hawk. He's on the Democrat side of the aisle, and despite that, he's got some choice words. Let's watch this clip.
I emerged from this briefing as dissatisfied and angry, frankly, as I have from any past briefing in my 15 years in the Senate. I am left with more questions than answers, especially about the cost of the war. My questions have been unanswered, and I will demand answers because the American people deserve to know. And I guess I am most concerned about the threat to American lives of potentially deploying our sons and daughters on the ground in Iran. We seem to be on a path toward deploying American troops on the ground in Iran to accomplish any of the potential objectives here. And there is also, as disturbingly as anything else, the specter of active Russian aid to Iran, putting in danger American lives. Literally, Russia seems to be aiding our enemy, actively and intensively, with intelligence and perhaps with other means. And China also may be assisting Iran. So the American people deserve to know much more than this administration has told them about the cost of the war, the danger to our sons and daughters in uniform, and the potential for further escalation and widening of this war, a war of choice made by this president, not chosen by the American people, with potentially huge consequences to American lives.
So yeah, there you go. Senator Blumenthal concerned about boots on the ground, as I think a lot of us are. I mean, we've even seen clips of them not being willing to rule out things like a draft. So a little bit freaky, especially for people like me. I think the first time I went on your show way back when, I was actually, I don't know if I was still active at that time, or I don't know. But either way, I was either active or getting out, and I just find it, even with the draft thing, I'm not going to lie, my sphincter tightened a little bit when they were talking about that a bit ago, because I'm still technically in what's called like IRR, which like, I think that means I'm still, like if you sign, for example, if you sign for 4-year, your standard 4-year enlistment in the U.S. with the military, there's an additional 4 years of what's called IRR, which is like something reserve, something or other.
They could call you back up to active duty in an emergency.
So right? Like, fuck, I think it's like June-ish or something when mine runs out. So I'm like Come on. So essentially, I'm the draft before the draft. So,
Jose, I just have a question. Maybe you could, since you were in the military, could give me an idea of what the answer is let's say they institute a draft tomorrow, right? And they were able to, by some miracle, actually distribute draft notices to people by the middle of the month, and say on April 1st, there were young men reporting to American bases to begin basic training. How long would it take one of those soldiers to be proficient enough to say, just be a general infantryman? Are we talking about like 9 months or a year, or what's the time frame there?
I mean, admittedly, I know nothing when it comes to like infantry or combat. I was aircraft mechanic. I was, for those
even better.
Yeah.
So how long would it take you to train to go to the Middle East to proficiently repair an American aircraft?
That is actually right. I am actually a better example, because you can kind of just throw humans into the meat grinder when it comes to like infantry type stuff. Which is, I wouldn't recommend, but like, I mean, this is like an extra level of meat grinder if you're talking about people maintaining aircraft. This is where you can get a really dangerous. And when I was deployed, funny enough, in Qatar in 2015, it's actually pretty standard, and this was active duty at the time, that you'd have a lot of guard and reserve troops that show up. That's kind of the role they fill, is every now and then they'll pick up, they kind of fill out the edges, and they're honestly the fucking worst. Well, it's a mix. It depends. Sometimes those are some of the best people at their job, and sometimes they're some of the worst. It really depends, but generally speaking, they suck. There's different things. Like in the Guard and in Reserve, there's what's called active units, and those are actually typically better than even your active duty units when it comes to knowing their job and like how to fix planes and stuff. Those are guys, but those because they work full time. They're basically active duty, but they work full time, but as Reserve or as a Guard. But then what they kind of do is they usually kind of spin up the Reserve/Guard guys or whatever for whenever they come in on their weekends and stuff. But your normal like reserve guy is fucking retarded. Like he doesn't know a damn thing. He fills out the edges. He is the guy that if for whatever reason you have a job that has a fire guard where you just need, say you're doing a fueling operation and you need somebody to just stand there and go make sure things aren't on fire. Those are the sort of jobs you use them for. They're absolutely useless. A lot of times it's actually kind of dangerous, especially with the tempo overseas and how much they're churning them. So, I mean, I can't give you an exact time frame, but I know for what it takes standard, because obviously I would assume if something like this were to happen, they'd probably expedite things somehow.
Right.
Try to cut down training or whatever. But I can't, I mean, it's been so long since I went through tech school, but I mean, basic training's like 8 weeks for Air Force, which is what I was in. And then, I mean, which obviously they would probably cut that short too. But even then, you really probably couldn't go shorter than like 4 or 5 weeks, I would assume, for what they want basic training for. And then it's probably, I want to say it was like a 3-4 month training course I had to go through. And even then, you still get to your first base and you're an idiot. I mean, like right. that tech school that I went to is the same thing that, like, when I say those reservist guys suck, those reservists went through the exact same training I'm talking about, but then they just go home and they don't do that every day. Whereas I, as an active duty guy, I got stationed at a base, and that's what I did day in, day out. I would fix planes. And even then, it still takes years to really like gain any sort of like actual like expertise or really know what you're doing. Yeah, it'd be a nightmare. It'd be quite a nightmare. It makes me think of what was it, the 12-Day War, where we had planes falling into the ocean and stuff. Fighter jets. So I could see situations like that where things get real wonky. We start seeing a lot more safety mishaps and stuff because you have people working on planes that have no business working on them. So I'd say it would probably be like maybe the quickest they could even churn them out would be 4 months though. So okay. Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, just make up a time. So like in the realm of 3 to 6 months. So, and even then, that's still like by that time, it's like, I mean, let's be real, we'd probably still be at war, but like you don't know what the situation is at that point. So
right. Well, my point is, I think we're going to need a draft in order to actually do like a Iraq style invasion of Iran. I mean, it's 3 to 4 size the times of Iraq. It's not a desert. The country is 90 to 95% Shia. And by the way, we just killed a very, very high ranking religious Shia figure who also happens to be the leader of Iran. And so it would require probably millions of troops in the upper hundreds of thousands to actually do a real ground invasion of Iran. And we just simply don't have the active duty forces to do it right now. And so to call up a draft, we're talking, like you said, 4 months at a minimum, and that's absolutely minimal training. And then also, the logistics of moving them into the Middle East. I mean, we really couldn't even be talking about a ground invasion until late this year or next year. And then the other thing I'll mention is, if we're talking about boots on the ground,
real quick before we move on, I did want to mention Balake in the chat here is an infantryman. So, and he said 4 months of 24/7 training is the absolute minimum, was barely enough to turn me and my class into standard infantrymen. But we were pretty squared away by the end of it. I'm not sure what what he was involved in, Balake. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about him to know what one he was in. But he's saying 4 months of 24/7 training. So, but sorry, go on.
I think that's like the shortest training time they're giving Ukrainians, and we see how that's going for those young men. So, anyways, I do think we are headed towards a special operations mission inside of Iran. They're going to try to locate and then take the 60% enriched uranium that Iran has. They apparently don't know where it is right now, so that's probably the one thing stopping the operation at this point. But if they think they find it, they're going to go in. I did look it up because I was just interested in 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. Like, how would you even store or transport that? Apparently, they think Iran put it into 16 canisters that are roughly the size of scuba tanks. And so that's what we would be trying, again, a very, sensitive material, because it's 60% enriched uranium, trying to move that out of the country. It seems like a very foolish operation. I'm guessing Iran has it somewhere that's not only well defended, but Iran is a big country. So it could, be very remote, where it's not necessarily easy to get, 40, 60, 100 Americans in and out of Tehran, right? Even though it seems we have like some limited ability to operate in Iranian airspace right now, they are shooting down Reaper and Predator drones. And I would guess that in order to get U.S. forces at least out of Iran, it would require helicopters, which are probably somewhere in the range of vulnerability as the Reaper and Predator drones. And so I don't think we have enough control over Iranian skies to safely get our soldiers in and out of the country. And then what happens if the mission goes awry, particularly if they're captured or like bogged down somewhere? Do we send more troops in, and do we end up with a large number of U.S. troops in Iran in like an isolated area, basically just trying to defend themselves from Iranian attacks? I think that kind of mission creep is possible. The ground invasion, again, Iraq style, I don't think it makes any sense. Now, the whole war didn't make any sense, so it's possible that Trump goes through with it. But logistically, I'm not sure that the U.S. military is prepared or capable to take on a foe the size of Iraq, especially when you consider when we're getting into ground invasion territory. We're talking about using live artillery, using ATACMS, using HIMARS, all these weapon systems that we at least depleted to the like minimal red line level in our own stockpiles in order to arm and fund Ukraine. We already went to the South Koreans and took their extra artillery shells. And we've done that to other stockpiles around the world too, in order to, again, help the Ukrainians. And so do we have the artillery to wage a ground offensive in Iran? Do we have the vehicles? Because we sent Ukraine a lot of our extra vehicles. I mean, we're already seeing the stresses on our air defense systems. So it doesn't seem like something that anybody could possibly believe would be an achievable operation to do a ground invasion in Iran.
Yeah, and I think one thing to bear in mind too is as we're thinking about this ground troop thing, we've already sustained casualties and plenty of injuries as well. I wouldn't be at least surprised if we start hearing more deaths here soon. What are we up to? I think actually 8 deaths. One though technically isn't war related. They're calling it a medical emergency, but while deployed. So I don't know. I have my skepticism there, but then it's like something around 150 injured. And this is without actually having any sort of actual engagements aside from, a few stray missiles and drones that leaked into some of our bases overseas. And this is still what we're looking at without a ground invasion. Apparently, here's a report too. There was a report from CBS News that they're saying that they're thinking there's even more than that, which that's what kind of people have been saying for a while. But it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, there's a lot of people that are running with some crazy, like every Middle Eastern base is just completely and utterly decimated. Who knows? Maybe. But it seems to be a little bit of a veil of information right now. But we're seeing from CBS reports or CBS News, they have a report that it's even worse than we thought, than even just that. And that's fair. That's pretty substantial. And that's them attacking us from a distance, which is like, I mean, this is almost unheard of, for like the U.S. You would think this is like, this just wouldn't happen. Like this would be the sort of casualties we'd hear when we actually had some sort of boots on the, or not maybe boots on the ground, but some sort of small special operations or maybe some small boots on the ground type operation somewhere. These are the sort of things we'd imagine, not under this situation. So, I think that's something to keep in mind. That there's plenty of people they're dead already. There's going to be more, and it's a little freaky. As I was thinking about it yesterday too, it's like, have you looked into it all? I guess there's a little bit of a question too. Have you looked into it all, like the the career? Have you? I mean, I guess they're probably being dodgy about some of the information. A lot of these people. I know there's one 20-year-old kid that a lot of people have already pointed out kind of looks like me, which makes it a little bit freaky. And you look at him, and he looks like he probably was some sort of like worked on some sort of like radar navigation or some shit like that. Is like, what kind of people are we talking about? I know he's a reservist because it just seems bizarre. These people are dying.
His
and
rank was private when he died too, so he was just. I'm guessing, maybe they're like for some technical assistance or like probably wasn't the decision maker. It seems like the U.S. really evacuated its military bases in the Middle East prior to launching this war. I was on Provoked with Daryl Cooper at the end of last week, and he was saying that a lot of what's at these military bases that's worth hitting has already been destroyed, and so that it may be that there wasn't much there in the first place. I mean, Iran could punch a couple holes in runways or send some drones into empty hangars, but they may calculate that that's really not worth their military equipment. They hit, I think, the fuel reserves at a base in Kuwait, and so they've hit some of the more valuable targets at these bases. And I think the most important thing that they've done is they punched some holes in the U.S. network of missile interceptor radars. So, when you're talking about intercepting a missile, when it's fired, the U.S. has an array of satellites and advanced radar systems that immediately detect the launch of the missile. And then if it's a ballistic missile, they're able to calculate the trajectory of the missile and have a good idea of where it's supposed to hit very early on after the launch of the missile. And that's what allows the missile interception rates to be as high as they are. Sometimes they report into like the 80-90% range. That's probably somewhat inflated, but the fact that they could get above 50% at all is likely due to the fact that they are able to detect these missiles early on. And even say, like, if a Patriot missile system is in Israel and doesn't necessarily have a radar that stretches all the way to Tehran, if a U.S. satellite, if a THAAD system based in Kuwait or Bahrain or something like that is able to detect the missile, the layered and integrated missile defense network allows that Patriot battery to begin preparing and intercept that missile. But once we lose that radar network, it's we punch holes in the American force field essentially around the Middle East from Iranian missiles, and now we're going to see a greater and greater number of Iranian missiles get through and potentially punch bigger and bigger holes in the missile defense network as we go on. Now, I'm not sure, highly doubt that Iran has the ability to say shoot down an American satellite. So we are going to maintain at least some pretty advanced capability to detect and track Iranian missiles with satellites. But every single radar that gets taken out, the chances of intercepting each Iranian missile is ticking down little by little by little.
Yeah, I guess I was just driving at with what I was surmising what this guy did. It's just kind of like I assume, considering the targets they were hitting, they're probably technicians just working on some sort of nerd something or other. And so just it's in my head conceptualizing, we were talking about infantrymen earlier, and when you think about like deaths in like in wars, I think that's a lot of times what you think of. So it's just I don't know, just something to mull over. You're like this 20-year-old kid born after 9/11. Not even that high ranking, reservist, which even more so like this expectation. Let's be real, probably didn't really expect, anything crazy as reservist, a weekend warrior. And then on top of that, he's, probably, I have no idea what these guys are doing, but I'd assume, especially since there's some of the last guys there on the basis, since they probably, a lot of people got,
they were
booted out.
just in a trailer. You know what I mean? So, I mean, they were probably there doing some kind of, I assume, air defense or missile defense work where there had to be like radars or something stationed, because he was in Bahrain or Kuwait, or he was in one of the countries very close to Iran. So the U.S. had to know that base was going to be a main target of the Iranians, that it was probably going to get hit because, not only is Iran launching the long range missiles at these bases, but also the shorter range missiles. I mean, potentially even like rockets and artillery fire, essentially, or, shorter range drones, all things that are much harder to detect and prevent attacks from.
Point being, though, is just like kind of a guy that, let's be real. I mean, he may have in his head thought at one point that's what he signed up for, but like he had probably some sort of technician job as a reservist. It's just probably not really entirely what this guy signed on for, or what most people even really consider of when they think of somebody in his position. Like an infantryman, different story. An infantryman dies, yeah, it's sad, but you're like, well, that's kind of like, I know you're in a thing. But like if you're some guy like, I'm a radar technician, and you're getting blown away or whatever as a reservist, it's like this guy was probably just trying to get some college, probably trying to learn a skill, maybe. Who knows? Maybe he joined to go do hoorah badass shit overseas. Who knows? Probably not. I mean, most of the guys that I met towards near the end of when I got out, that was no longer really the case. I mean, there was really no impetus for Americans anymore. Now that 9/11, like for most people, like anyone joining by the time I got out was born after 9/11 generally. So it's like no one has this like patriotism or whatever. There's no real reason. They're mostly just doing it for materialistic reasons. So I don't know. I mean, I guess you kind of get what you get. You make that gamble. You play that, make that deal with the devil. But I mean, I was there once, so I just kind of was like, holy shit. So
and like this kid's story may be that he watched a lot of war movies, and the more recent war, they're not making Platoon anymore for the most part. The war movies are all heavily influenced by the Department of War, right? Like they tell these studios that, hey, we'll let you record some really cool footage with our F-35s and our tanks and our guys firing artillery. But, when we look at this script, we're going to make sure to strip out anything that doesn't reflect well on the military, right? Because they're basically getting military hardware for free or at a price that they couldn't get otherwise, right? Or if maybe, in high schools now, the school districts say they don't have enough money. Of course they do, but they say they don't have enough money, and they're actually using people from the Department of War's like ROTC program as teachers in high schools, and not just gym teachers, but also like science teachers and things like that. And so, this kid like could have been propagandized essentially from, the time he entered public school, and it was just fed this thing that like, hey, if you want to have a good life, if you want to be a cool guy, if you want to, meet a nice woman one day and have a house and kids and all those things, you get those by being a soldier. And, particularly for a lot of young men now, my guess is that, they don't get a whole lot of positive male engagement, particularly in school. And if the only males there are soldiers who are basically there on a recruitment mission, I mean, they're easy targets.
All right, moving on. Apparently, there's a preliminary investigation showing that we're responsible. Not we, obviously, I didn't do it, but the U.S. Is responsible for bombing the Iranian elementary school, killing over 100 children. Here's a picture of the mass graves being dug for the children. That's absolutely awful. Which, I mean, I know I've covered that pretty ad nauseum here on this channel. I guess kind of tie this into a little bit. Although I think it says in this piece that they were blaming it on outdated target packages or something like that. And one thing that was thrown around a lot, and even then I'm completely open to these people lying, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Apparently they're, as you just wrote, apparently they're using Palantir AI to pick targets in Iran now. So, with that, we have these targeting snafu. Maybe, who knows? Maybe the one was outdated, which, hell, that's almost, in a weird way, kind of almost worse, I guess. Although I guess less dystopian. It's just more the idea of really, you didn't even verify anything. But I know on the AI side thing, you're that's the way things are going. But as you wrote up a piece yesterday about them picking targets, a little creepy. I know this was a big deal in the Gaza war with Israel. It seems like now it's just this seems like the trend. Things happen in Israel, crazy over the top. They were just murdering just slews of people in Gaza. And it just feels like it's almost allowed it to become normalized to allow it to happen here. I think we see another such situation with the Palantir AI picking targets. A little freaky. I think I don't remember which country it is. I know they're one of the many countries I think Israel's at odds with. They bombed a park called Police Park at one point that actually had absolutely nothing to do with the police, but that was their AI system, targeting system, used that to pick it. So this is sort of creepy things we can see with AI going forward. It's not even to really get into the more technocratic nonsense about, where this can go domestically, how creepy it can get, how far this can go. For anyone who's watched Winter Soldier, Captain America, at the end, the big bad, they literally had an AI that kind of predicted every possible future threat and just was supposed to kill a bunch of people. That's basically what we're the future we might be looking at. But it sounds like they're using Palantir AI. I think they're still saying they're double checking it, although Israel's at the point where they're not. So on this scale, give it 5 years and that's where we'll be. So any thoughts on this?
Yeah, the question is always, are they actually double checking it? The 972 magazine, which is an Israeli outlet, reported speaking with the Israeli soldiers who basically said that any name that the AI generated, they spent 20 seconds on each name and just verified that it's a male and that they were above the age of 18, right? That was all. So if that is the level of double checking going on in the American war planning, then obviously you're going to end up with a lot of things targeted that shouldn't be targeted. It's just how much are we biasing towards the AI? Also, we saw with Israel, once the AI stopped producing new targets for them to hit, they just changed the way the AI spits out targets, right? They had a system,
the preference settings or whatever a little bit.
It's basically they gave every Palestinian in Gaza a Hamas credit score, right? Like the Chinese social credit score. And if your Hamas credit score was say above the number of 60, you got put on the list to be targeted. Well, once they hit everybody at 60, they then cranked it down to say 55. And suddenly we have 10,000 new members of Hamas to kill.
It's a COVID trick, essentially. You remember the COVID trick? For those who understand the the way they did the testing? I forget the specifics of it, but it's literally the same. It's basically kind of the same thing. It's spit it. Essentially, they lower the threshold, and they're like, "Oh, look, we have this many. You clearly there." It just means that you may have some microscopic amount of the virus, which doesn't necessarily mean. Anyway, sorry, getting off.
No. That's another really good comparison of kind of how this works. And by the way, that police park was a park in Iran that was bombed, and I believe that they think Israel bombed it, and so that would
they're attacking too many countries to keep track, so I couldn't remember.
Right. So that would likely be an example of, I think, Israel not vetting AI or just hitting whatever the AI spits out, one or the other, right? They either just check it off with a human clicking the little bots on the tab saying valid target, or they're not even bothering to do that anymore. And then one other thing I just wanted to say on the girls' school, Jose, I do think it's important that you say we, not necessarily from the American perspective, because, me and you actually, we in that sense are libertarians and we don't support what our government is doing here. And, we're not ordering the strikes and we're not responsible, but 90 to 95% of Iranians will never see it that way. And there will forever exist a cemetery in Iran with the bodies of 150 schoolgirls, all dismembered and burnt and crushed and mangled. And every time an Iranian walks past or see that cemetery, they will say they did that to us, right? Just like the way if it happened in the United States of America, 90 to 95% of Americans would say the Iranians, they did that to us. And so to understand like what we are doing here, like we are creating a forever enemy by committing these type of war crimes in Iran, by blowing up schools, or even, blowing up that ship off the coast of Sri Lanka, right? Where, Donald Trump was asked, well, why didn't we just capture it? Which you would think would just make better tactical sense. Now, let's say some Americans get shot down over Iran. Well, we have 150 Iranian sailors to trade them for our pilots. That seems like important leverage to have in this war. Or let's say Donald Trump does get his dream regime change. Well, this is a nice, pretty new ship to be the showcase of the new Iranian military that the United States didn't have to spend a penny on. Right. But rather than do that, we blew it up because it was more fun. We killed 60 sailors because it was.
By the way, he said that for those who aren't aware of that. It's literally you saying more fun. That was a quote of Trump. He's trying to do the whole like hamming up, goofing with the audience. He didn't say he said it was more fun, to be fair. I think he said, he's like, oh, the boys at the DOW or whatever. Oh, they asked him, why'd you do that? And they're like, oh, you didn't have to do that. Like, oh, because it's more fun. He's like,
but he is acknowledging that he was a part of the decision-making process and that he is the decision maker. So whether he thought it was more fun or he
didn't care
authorized it because they thought it was more fun, it happened because somebody in the United States thought it was more fun. And I mean, these are the kinds of things that are going to make Persians hate Americans for generations. And as much as, again, like we're not responsible for the crimes of our government, I can't say it's not understandable why the people who are the victims of our government don't see us as being culpable, even if, we didn't vote for Donald Trump or only voted for Donald Trump because he said we wouldn't get involved in stupid, needless wars in the Middle East.
Yeah, the meme warfare is not helping either, coming out of any of the official accounts. Absolutely atrocious for anyone paying attention to all that. It's also going to hurt our pocketbooks. For those who have pocketbooks, I don't know why I went to pocketbook. Wallet, that would make more sense. Here's a Spectator Index saying Pentagon officials have told Congress that the war on Iran cost over $11.3 billion in its first 6 days, according to a New York Times report. Also,
that
Iran's
has to be an underestimate, by the way.
Yeah,
I think what they are calculating there is how they were calculating the operational cost of the war against like Venezuela and the drug boats in the Caribbean, where they were basically just counting, okay, it costs like $1 million a day to have a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group in the Middle East. It costs X number of dollars a day for 100 warplanes to be in the Middle East. And then they're also counting the expense of the interceptor shot and of like the missiles and bombs dropped, right? But I'm sure, as you know, Jose, doing aircraft maintenance, that a lot of the costs are actually on the maintenance end. And so, an F-35 can't fly operations for 3 months without undergoing significant maintenance. And we're not just talking about replacing the tires and the brakes. We're talking about, repairs to the airframe, the engines. The airframes may have like, I think, a decade-long lifespan or something like that, but the engines certainly don't. They have a maximum number of hours, and a lot of other parts and components on these warplanes do as well. And I'm sure it's certainly true with like the launchers for the Patriots and the THAADs. Like, how many sustained launches can they undergo before they need significant repairs? And so, the cost is certainly a lot higher. I think this is like just a fraction of the true number.
Yeah, and it's probably going to go even higher as Iran has now given the green light on economic targets, meaning banks, which I'm not big brained enough to really think about how that'll affect the world economy, but I can only assume that probably won't work out well, attacking banks. And this is in response to them having their banks attacked. There was a bank attacked overnight in Tehran. I mean, it's probably Israel, although who knows? We've done awful things too. But yeah, with that, they said last night the American and Zionist terrorist army, after failing in their military objectives, targeted one of the country's banks. Said Khatam al-Anbiya said people in the region should not be within a 1 kilometer radius of the banks. So now they've greenlit banks, which I just mean in the region. So I guess that just means generally all of the Middle East or no longer have banks. Like I just can't even imagine. Like, I mean, I guess we have so much online stuff now. You'd maybe be okay, but yeah, well, I can't imagine if you shut down
a little bit of psychological warfare from the Iranians, right? Where, look, I don't know what actual impact there would be if Iran hit a bank in the UAE, say. Like, all the actual currency and valuables are probably in a vault that will survive the attack, right? And most of the money that people have in a bank is just digital anyways. And so blowing up, if somebody goes down the street and nobody should ever do this, but if there was a gas leak and your local bank branch exploded, it's not like your money blew up. You had $10,000 in your bank account. Your $10,000 didn't blow up. That $10,000 exists like in numbers in their computers, which are backed up on clouds and in different places. So, but I do wonder if Iran is maybe trying to say this, and then people will think, oh shit, I should go to the bank and take out my money before, like, even if like you don't think your money is physically in the bank, if all the banks are destroyed or damaged, like, how do you get your money? Yeah, and so maybe they're trying to create a bank run and some panic here. Also, I think there's an interesting dynamic going on in this conflict that, again, either shows the underhandedness of the Israelis or the ineptitude of the Americans. And so we've hit targets in Iran, like banks, like water treatment plants, a desalination plant. And these are things where hitting them in Iran are not going to help America achieve its war objectives of regime change or getting the Iranians to comply with American demands on limiting their missile program, not rebuilding their navy, not having a nuclear program and things like that. But it gives Iran, at least seemingly, a green light to then hit those targets around the Middle East. And so while Iran only, I think, gets about 3 to 9%, I think, of its drinking water from seawater, so, stripping out the salt and doing it that way, a lot of the Gulf Arab countries and Israel, that number is in the I think 75% or more range, like it's over 50%. And so if you make water treatment facilities targets, it's not necessarily going to hurt Iran the most by blowing all these facilities up in the Middle East. I mean, it will. Iranians will suffer, but other countries are far more vulnerable to that. And the same thing with banks and schools and other targets. If Iran feels that they are doing it in retribution and that gives them the green light and cover to do so, it's going to hurt all these other countries a lot more. They're much smaller. Their regimes are much more vulnerable, right? Like Iran, everybody likes to talk about, 20-something% of the population is Azeri, 10% of the population is Kurd, and this is going to spur an uprising. 95% of the population is Shia, right? That is not the case in Saudi Arabia. I think a majority or close to it is a Shia, where it's ruled by Sunni. That's the case in Bahrain. And a lot of these countries, their governments are only propped up and exist because of the American support and the American military. And so I think, if we're going to see regime change in the Middle East, Bahrain may actually be more likely than Iran at this point.
Mm-hmm. And just to finish off this segment, I guess a little casual reminder that as we're probably all about to be drowning in economic turmoil, the powers that be are raking in money hand over fist. We have Trump's sons cashing in on the drone game. Apparently, they've put a bunch of money into what was the name of it? Powerus, a Florida-based defense startup competing for Pentagon drone contacts. So they're kind of making money off of the recent Iranian drone attacks. Have kind of brought this stuff back into focus, made it more of a push, and so you essentially have them getting ready to make a fuckload of money off of their daddy's war. And then on the flip side, we have even Iran. Even Iran is making hand over fist money. They're exporting more oil than before the war. So they are still moving through the Strait of Hormuz, which a lot of people don't know. So it's funny enough. It seems that once again we have a similar dynamic to what when we started off everything with the Russian-Ukrainian war. It looks like it's all backfiring on us, and we're weirdly strengthening our adversaries in a certain bizarre sort of way. So while everyone else is getting screwed over, the elites are still making their money, regardless of whether they're at odds or not. So any thoughts on that before we move on to the next segment?
Well,
to which I'll let you go if you want, by the way. I know he said an hour, but the next segment is shorter. It's only a couple things. But if you want to stick around for that, otherwise I can go through them myself. But any thoughts on that?
I'll hang around for it. I will say, Iran is less vulnerable to the Strait of Hormuz being closed or mined, because if a lot of the Saudi oil exports, the Emirates, the Qataris, they are all kind of on the north side of the Strait of Hormuz and have to go through it or near it, where the Iranians do have a southern port, and I do believe they have some export capabilities through the Caspian Sea as well to the north. And so I'm not sure if, the U.S. would be willing to treat the Caspian Sea as a battlefield. But Iran does have the ability to get oil out, and these other countries do not. And spiking oil prices are also good for the Russians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're crushing it right now. Killing it. We're strengthening our adversaries with war. Isn't it a little ironic, it seems? Putting in regimes that are actually less amenable to us. And it's also spilling over possibly into our own shores. There's been lots of talks about sleeper cells. Here's Trump on it.
They try to hit us back. Have you been briefed about how many Iran sleeper cells there could be inside the U.S. right now?
I have been, and a lot of people came in through Biden with this stupid open border. But we know where most of them are. We've got our eye on all of them, I think.
Is it dozens?
They came in through the open border policies of Sleepy Joe Biden, one of the worst president in the history of our country. And we've got our eyes on all of them. But the war itself is being prosecuted at a level that nobody's seen before. It's pretty.
All right, a lot of people are saying false flag incoming. I'm also, while I am, that's the area that I've chosen to study, the art of the false flags. Mostly, that's what I focus on a lot. But even then, I got to be honest, it could be totally organic too.
That's really, really, really important to drive home that. If there is a supposed attack by Iranian in the United States, every single American should be very skeptical of who is actually behind that attack. That said, the Iranians are at war with the Americans. And if they decided
war would
to
reach
strike
us?
the American homeland after we've bombed their country at least 5,500 times, then that, from their perspective, is just going to be a part of warfare. Now, Iran doesn't have missiles capable of hitting the United States. I'm not sure how kind of close to just generic terrorism the Iranian government is willing to get in bed with, right? Are they willing to put like a sleeper asset in the United States of America that's going to rent a U-Haul truck or buy a gun and just shoot up a church or drive through a park or something like that? Maybe, and they may see that as fair game after we blew up one of their schools. I don't know. But I mean, I would just look at like the Ukraine war, right? Where Ukraine was able to smuggle drones in through shipping into Russia and actually hit a Russian base that housed some of their nuclear capable bombers. Let's say that Iran is able to get basically on a shipping containers in a shipping container somewhere, a bunch of drones, and those drones are able to fly out and then completely wreak havoc at an American port, right? Like, I think there are a lot of ways that, especially from what happened during the Ukraine war, where Iran could try to position assets. I'm not saying to use Mexico, but maybe gain a ship somewhere and using that to launch a couple drones at the United States of America. I think it's really possible that this war does come home. Certainly not. I don't think Iran is going to launch an ICBM tipped with a nuclear missile and hit like the East Coast or the West Coast of the United States of America. I'm not talking about that, but some kind of asymmetric attack, I do think is something that we should be on the lookout for. And if it happens, as Americans, we have no one to blame but our own government for starting an unprovoked, unnecessary war with the Iranians when they presented no threat to us whatsoever.
And this segment, we're focusing on how this Iranian war is not, surprise, staying isolated to Iran. Who would have thought? Obviously the most obvious is leaking into our own domestic abode. But Lebanon's feeling the heat as well. The death toll has risen to 570 now. I've been pretty decent, I think, about staying on top somewhat of the Lebanon stuff. So, I mean, me and you both know this precedes even this, but this kind of was, I guess, the catalyst for the latest spat of back and forth. It really is just the most absurd situation when you lay it out. Frankly, it's even more absurd that we had people like Lindsey Graham trying to drag us into it. Because as you know, I'd always try to bring this up because it's so absurd. This was like Israel was pounding Lebanon way back in the day, like back in the Gaza days. Well, I mean, we're still in Gaza days, but you know what I mean, back before the 12-day war and all that stuff. And then they managed to get a ceasefire, quote unquote ceasefire. And then we obviously we're not with them, but you know what I mean. The United States came into this deal. The ceasefire deal is a third party, essentially supposed to be the backstop, the neutral party. Ha ha ha. And who would have thought they treated the ceasefire as if it wasn't one? It gave them permission to murder and not the other side. It was mostly it was a ceasefire in regards to Hezbollah, which didn't attack them at all during that period of time. And a lot of the ceasefire deals, because it's like ongoing that they're trying to make with the Lebanon government, was always. Almost always like disarming Hezbollah or something like that, which would cause a civil war. And they were open to it, but they had one condition: actually honor the fucking ceasefire, which they never, ever, 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 ever did. So it's just such a bizarre situation that here we are. And there's even crazy enough, there's politicians on our side of this that are really trying to bring us into it. And it's just a bizarre situation. I can't even wrap my head around the argument for why we should. But yes, it's come up to 570 here deaths. So getting a little out of hand. So any thoughts on the Lebanon stuff? It's just such an absurd parody type situation to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the whole conflict with Lebanon really boils down to the Greater Israel Project and the fact that Israel wants to take southern Lebanon for its own. In part, I think it has to do with water, but a lot of it is just biblical, believing that the bounds of ancient Israel that, Mike Huckabee says the current government in Tel Aviv is now entitled to stretches as far north as the Litani River. And so that's the part of Lebanon that Israel wants to take as its own. And I do wonder if maybe Iran is making some meaningful strides on the Israelis, and that Hezbollah decided, even though they've taken some pretty heavy losses over the past 2 or 3 years, that they smell blood in the water. And even though the Hezbollah has taken some significant losses, that they've allowed Israel over the past year and a half or so to occupy southern Lebanon, that they are actually still a capable and competent fighting force. And the fact that Israel is so heavily bombing southern Lebanon right now, I think indicates that Israel is maybe a little bit overwhelmed with the conflict that they have on their hand, and they don't feel they have time to really mess around with precise targeting in Lebanon, and that they're just going to bomb and bomb and bomb and bomb, hoping that eventually Hezbollah will stop. And this is, I think, signals that this war could get even more complicated if Ansar Allah in Yemen decides to enter the conflict. For whatever reason, I think a lot of people thought that they would enter the conflict before Hezbollah will, because over the past few years, they've actually been a bigger thorn in the side of the Israelis and the Americans as they attempted their ethnic cleansing of Gaza than even Hezbollah was. But They've been saying on the sideline so far, maybe they feel like they really don't need to, that they've kind of cemented their legacy in the Middle East as a group opposed to the American empire and the Zionist project, and they could sit this one on the sidelines, and the Israelis and the Americans are happy, at least in the short term, not to bomb Yemen and make this into a wider conflict. But I do wonder if, to some degree, Ansar Allah is kind of just biding their time and waiting to enter this conflict at a more opportune moment, understanding that if in some scenario the Americans and the Israelis prevail, that they are next on the hit list.
Mm-hmm. And then also on the Iraq side of things, we got Iraqi resistance launches over 30 operations on U.S. bases within 24 hours. So we got the Iraqi units in there, which I kind of wanted to get from you to understand. I want to hear from you to try to see if I could get you to explain this a little bit better to me. I haven't read this piece yet. I'm assuming it's a PMU, the same group from yesterday or whatever. Oh no, it's an Islamic resistance in Iraq, a coalition of several Iraqi factions. Are you tracking, PMU as well, popular mobilization units? They make up a significant bulk. What I wanted with this story, I'm struggling to wrap my head around it. So I'm glad I have you here. But I know Iraq is in the mix, but I don't believe it's their entire official military or whatever. But I believe it's units of their semi-official military, essentially. And this has to do with a lot of the multiple wars we've had there, and then they have different militias and yada yada. They get integrated into their military within whatever different, changing of the regime. And I think this has a lot to do with the Sunni-Shia divide you were talking about earlier, since these guys are Shia, I think, and then Iraq is this country that's kind of a little bit split. There's a lot of countries that are basically one or the other. Iraq is this tenuous balance of the two. Which are generally kind of at odds. So that's why we have this unique situation, correct me if I'm wrong, where we have portions of the military, of Iraq's military, essentially attacking the United States. So I don't know if you have a better way to explain that, because I'm just trying to conceptualize it for me and my audience to kind of get a grip on, who the fuck is even really attacking the United States here? Yeah. What are they to the larger Iraqi government? Because it's no one's saying we're at war with the Iraqi government, but it's sections of their military, but they aren't even necessarily a group that works completely in tandem, if that makes sense. So I find that obviously this is spilling over. It looks like we could end up with some sort of Iraqi something or other again. Any thoughts on all of this? Maybe you can help us wrap our head around it a little bit better.
I think we are potentially looking at another civil war in Iraq. And I think the only reason we haven't seen one up until this point is that the people are just tired of it and tired of the killing. But as you say, these are now they're called PMUs. Initially, they were called the PMF, the Popular Mobilization Forces. And these were established by the Iranian Quds Force, led by Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general who was assassinated by the U.S. in January of 2020. That kicked off a little tit for tat between the U.S. and Iran. The I think Canadian or Ukrainian passenger plane was shot down in that. Iran fired some missiles at an American base, but told the Americans before. Some American soldiers got concussions, but besides that, the Iranians gave enough of a heads up that didn't spiral into a major crisis. But since then, these PMFs have been to some degree integrated into the Iraqi military, and a lot of them are stationed at Iraqi military bases. And so when Israel and the US have attacked the PMF, a lot of times the Iraqi government will protest and say, you attacked one of our government installations, and along with killing members of the PMF, which are essentially Iraqi Shia militias, you killed members of the actual uniformed Iraqi security services as well. And so, just to talk about how complex this is. Now, the PMF is a makeup of several different Iraqi groups, and they're constantly changing names. And so it's nearly impossible for any Americans to actually track and kind of keep track of what group is doing what. I think the most aggressive of the Shia militias is complete Hezbollah. Is not associated with the Lebanese Hezbollah, but they are an Iraqi group, and they have attacked U.S. bases and Iraq and Syria and Jordan repeatedly over the past decade. And so it's possible that they are behind the attack. This has the real possibility to ignite a real civil war in Iraq. These attacks seem to have picked up after the Grand Ayatollah Sistani, who is in Iraq, and I believe he is actually the highest rate. Like, he is the Shia Pope, right? Like, the former Iranian Ayatollah was a very, very senior Iranian or Shia cleric, but Sistani is actually the highest ranking, and he officially condemned the U.S. and the Israeli aggression on Iran. And so I do think we're going to see more targeting of the U.S. in Iraq by the Shia militias because of that declaration. And the only other thing I'll mention here, Jose, is that it seems that at least some portion of the U.S. intelligence community, and likely Mossad, are doing everything they can to encourage a Kurdish uprising in Iran. Now, I believe they really wanted to use the Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga, which is probably the most competent Kurdish fighting force in the region. But the Iraqi Kurds are somewhat happy with where they are now. They have semi-autonomy from Baghdad. They get to keep an acceptable portion of the oil revenue generated in Iraqi Kurdistan. And they've been able to keep the ISIS attacks and things like that to a minimum over the past few years. So I don't think they want to go to war for the Americans in Iran, knowing that the PMFs in Iraq will likely respond to that by going to war with Iraqi Kurdistan. And I think they've gone so far as to actually plant a story in CNN. It was published by Natasha Bertrand, and if anybody remembers her name, she was one of the she was one of the main Russiagators, right? Like, she was the Judith Miller of Russiagate, where every time the deep state had a new conspiracy theory about Donald Trump, they would give it to her, and she would then publish it in the mainstream media. And she came out with this story saying that the Kurds are prepared to invade Iran. And I think what they were trying to do is hope that Tehran would see that, overreact, bomb the Peshmerga, and then draw the Peshmerga into the war that way. And it didn't work. And I will say, Jose, I caught somebody in the chat talking about Ben Gvir, because I know Scott Ritter has been claiming that Ben Gvir was killed. But no, I think he was seen alive in the past like 12 hours.
Yeah, there was three. There was Ben Gvir. They said something happened to him. They said Netanyahu's brother, and then they also said Bezalel Smotrich's son. One of those is true, but Bezalel Smotrich's son, for as far as I'm aware, is alive.
He's injured.
He's injured. And then the other two, it was just false information as far as I'm aware. I mean, I guess it could be true, but there's no like legitimate reports out there.
He's been seen alive. Ben Gvir at least has been seen alive since that report. And I think there was some conflation because he was somewhat injured in a car accident, I think about a year and a half ago. And so there were some people kind of churning out those old reports of the car accident to give some credibility to this claim. But no, the bastard is still alive. You know what I mean? You know, there's a couple houses in the Middle East right now where if an interceptor happened to land on it, nobody's going to be shedding any tears. Particularly the Syrian.
The head of Mossad was reported too. That was going around. The head of Mossad. That's bullshit too. But go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I was just saying that maybe Jolani will take a stray ballistic missile in this whole thing, and at least then Americans will like get a little reprieve.
Anyways, I wanted to touch on Syria real quick. I actually wasn't intending on touching on it, but we did talk about it yesterday. And apparently, they're already talking about that they're willing to help with this Hezbollah disarming. So it sounds like they're fully on Team Zio here, to whatever degree, maybe not to a full degree. I don't know if they're going to really, how much they're going to get involved in a larger, whatever's going on. But it kind of, a little wild for those tracking the Syria thing. I guess you mentioned civil war with Iraq, and I'm continually astounded by the brazen behavior of the Syrian government in regards to their people. Now, I don't really know the demographic well, Shia, Sunni, off top, so like maybe that plays into it. But I've been thinking for a while. At some point, something has to happen. Because it's just insane sectarian violence, just a complete giving away of land to to Israel. So just from the outside looking in, it's just like any person there that has any sort of semblance of understanding what's going on in that country would have zero respect for their government. You would think, if anything, have large amounts of hate for them. So any thoughts on like what's going on? Could we see any sort of mix up, or am I wrong there? And that he's got a pretty good grip on the nation, because it just seems wild the way he's behaving. But I mean, either way, Israel wins, because either they get a puppet dictator or they get a more devolved nation. So
I think at least right now, the Turks view Jolani as their man in Damascus. And so I think Jolani has Turkish protection. And look, I think like the Iraqi people, the Syrian people are somewhat tired of war and aren't ready to fight a civil war, particularly not against these absolutely head-chopping lunatic nut jobs that now run the Syrian government. Now, it seems that Washington has the idea, I guess this will be the bank shot of the bank shot, right? Because initially Syria was the bank shot off of Libya, where we repurposed the jihadists and the weapons that removed Muammar Gaddafi from power in order to try to take Assad out, right? And now it seems that they're trying to funnel the Al-Qaeda shot troops from Syria into Lebanon to fight there, because the Lebanese government isn't really capable of fighting Hezbollah, and they want to take Hezbollah down. Israel must be stretched if they're willing to use the Al-Qaeda shot forces to do it in Iran and in Gaza and the West Bank. So I think that's probably the scenario playing out there.
All right, last one to get you out of here. A little bit more on the Goofy side. I brought you in with Goofy. We'll take you out with Goofy. Although maybe I shouldn't be laughing, considering how unhinged this president's been and the things he's done. Maybe not. Apparently, President Trump again alluded to his desire to annex Canada on Tuesday, calling Canadian Prime Minister Carney future governor. So, any thoughts on that? I know that's, like I said, it's more the Goofy side of things, but I figured it'd be a fun way to send you out.
It's got to be a joke. I mean, I don't know. I can't say for sure. I thought the Greenland thing was a joke, and it wasn't. Like, they actually had at least some intention of taking Greenland. But Canada is a different beast and a different animal. There's no way. I mean, even if Trump thinks it, this has to be one where even Marco Rubio would be like, Mr. President, we don't have time for this right now. We got Cuba to get to next, and then Yemen, and we got to wrap up Somalia and Nigeria. So I would assume the list of enemies is too long to get and make Canada into one.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right, Kyle, it's a pleasure having you here. I kept you longer than I meant to. But we'll let you go now. Let people know where they can find you. Yeah, I saw Jack just gave Anti-War a big shout out before we started. Old Jack, Dorsey, the previous owner of Twitter, thought that was pretty cool. But Kyle, let people know where they can find you. Obviously, like I just mentioned, antiwar.com is one of them. But let them know where all the places they can find you at.
Yeah, I'm opinion editor at antiwar.com. And of course, right now, that's the most important website. Please check that out. And it's not even for my work in the viewpoints, which, I'm not to downgrade them, but what Dave DeCamp is doing in the news section every day is just the most important journalism going on right now. So guys, please read Dave DeCamp. And then I'm at Kyle Anzalone _ on X. I'm the news editor at the Libertarian Institute. So I do a little bit of work of kind of catching the stories that Dave can't get to. And I'm following some foreign policy there. I also do some news over for judgenap.com, and check out my show, the Kyle Anzalone Show. Today, 4 to 45 Eastern, I'm interviewing Daryl Cooper. So we're going to really go into the weeds on air defense, missile defense, and which I think is really the domain that this war is being fought in. And I think it's hopefully going to be a really interesting interview.
Hell yeah. Highly recommend your show. You always get crazy good guests and do stream fairly regularly, probably multiple times a week. So go check that out. Appreciate you joining us, Kyle. We're going to finish out the show with one more segment. We'll see you. You have a good one. But we're going to go through one more segment today with Epstein file hackers. Let's stop, take a moment, smell the roses, say good morning to a handful of people, and then we'll get into our last segment of the day. Be sure you're hitting that like button. Any of you all here, hit that like button, help a brother out, like King David says here. Good morning, King David. Good morning, CSCSTP. By the way, for any new listeners, this is a stream I do regularly in between segments. Pop in and say hello to the chat. I also do timestamp this after the facts. If you don't want to listen to it, you can always catch this on the replay, whether it's on YouTube, Rumble, or any of the podcatchers. I know audio listeners probably don't really want to hear me chit-chatting with the audience, so that's what you got timestamps for. Good morning, Retardo. Good morning, Scott. Good morning, Kamar Neal. Good morning, Shannon. Good morning, John Black. Thank you for the super chat from earlier. Good morning, Mulgara. Good morning, Boomer Sooner. A lot of y'all showed up today. Alien Big Cat, the regulars. Oh, Reese, good morning to you. Good morning. Here's one I want to follow up. Here's Balake. Good morning to you, by the way, Balake. You said earlier we were talking about you joining and how long it would take infantry, yada yada. Your period was 2006 to 2009. I did want to follow up on that because in my head, I felt like I almost presented it as if like you may have been like in during some draft time. So I thought maybe the context was that like you were actually in a draft or something. And that's where like it took us 4 months in the draft. So I'm like, is this guy in fucking Nam? And he's like old as shit. And he's like, oh, well, back in Nam, it took us 4 months to get through. You know, I didn't know what it was. So I did want to point out 2006 to 2009. Thank you for your service, Balake. Sorry you did that. Sorry, brother. And you ended up being a conscientious objector, so good for you. I thought about doing that near the end, but everyone I heard, everything I looked into about conscientious objection was like fucking nightmare, like to do. So like if you're like early in your enlistment, maybe or something, but it's like I saw people that was like took years. So it's like most enlistments are only like 4 years. So if you're like at least a year or two in, you're like, it's almost not worth the trouble from what little bit I knew. So I just kind of waited for my time to run out. But yeah, glad you saw the light. Good morning, Tucker. Good morning. As Blockade says, no one hates more than anti-war veterans. Sure, for sure, brother. I hate that shit big time. Although I never saw combat, to be very clear. But it just, I don't know, if anything, that in some ways almost makes it more sinister because it gets more sanitized by it just being like some normal day-to-day job. You aren't training to kill people. I'm training to fix planes. So, who else we got? All right, I think I've said enough. Good morning, aggressively agreeing. Good morning to you. Let's see if there's anybody else in here. How many Dr. Peppers do we have to donate to get Scott Horton on TMD? Do you think he'd even fit for TMD? Actually, you know what? I bet you he would. I need to get Scott on here. I mean, I don't want in any way make this sound like I'm talking shit about Scott. It's just like in any way, because he's great. He does great work. But I've never had him on the show, and I think it's partially because at least for TMD, I mostly do TMD. Scott's style is like you ask him a couple questions and you sit back for 3 hours, and just kind of goes, which is like it's fine, that's great. It's just that like I can listen to other people's shows for that. If I'm going to do my own show, I kind of want to have a conversation. But I will say, to that point, he's been the few times I've watched his show as of lately. I mean, I don't know if it's changed. I don't know if it's like a pre-book Scott and a post-book Scott, kind of like a post-nut clarity type thing. He's been a lot more calm, a lot more chill. So actually, maybe we'd be better for like a back and maybe he'd be good for like a TMD. I just didn't think like we go through so much stuff in TMD and we cycle through topics. Whereas where Scott's like, if you want to do like a 2-hour, lecture on some sort of specific thing going on in foreign policy or something, that'd be the guy to get. But I just normally don't want to go like that route. And by no means am I in any way talking shit about that, because that's great and that's out there, and I actually like listening to that stuff. I just my personal likings. I like to be involved, so I like to feel like I'm doing something, even if I'm not. So yeah, to be very clear, but maybe he'd be good. I do need to get him for at least one of the No Way Jose episodes. He's also he's foreign policy guy too, so it's also like I don't normally do like the No Way Jose, like the paywalled episodes. Like I don't normally do my topic driven episodes that are just like one or two one topic and that's it. I don't normally do that with like foreign policy. So it just never really made sense, particularly to have Scott, given his like style of presentation and the content that he covers. It just never really made sense to me. But one of these days, we do need to get him on. Scott is great. So, and by no means am I talking shit. I'm just saying so far as like the way I choose guests, it just hasn't come around to him. So, Tom says Horton show with Cooper is good. I think he's gotten better with the conversation. I see your point though. He's a lecturer, not a conversationalist. Exactly. That's a good way to put it. I just want to be. I'm not trying to talk shit. It's just it's not what I'm going for. So, Mo Garrett says I could listen to Scott talk for days. He's the best. Exactly. That's what I agree. I'm the same way. I don't want to. If I'm going to listen to Scott talk, I'd rather listen to it on somebody else's show that they spent time setting up and scheduling and preparing for and yada yada yada. So if I'm going to do it, it's just not me. So. Yeah, aggressively agreeing. So if you bring up videos of neocons lying, Scott might go off. Yeah, great. All right, let's get into the last topic of the day. Let's get into Epstein file hackers. To start this off, this isn't quite hacking relating, but this is more just like an update in what's going on. Here's James Comer, Representative James Comer. He's one of the GOP guys on the House Oversight Committee in regards to the Epstein stuff. They've been doing a deposition of Epstein's accountant, so let's listen to what he had to say.
First of all, Mr. Khan's answering.
No, give me a second. Let me start that over.
First of all, Mr. Khan's answering every question thus far. He's completed 2 full hours of depositions. I would say we are possibly at the halfway point. It could last more than 4 hours, but he confirmed there were 5 clients that paid money to Epstein, and that was Les Wexner, Glenn Dubin, Stephen Sinofsky, the Rothschilds, and Leon Black. We've already deposed Wexner, and we're going to be deposing Leon Black very soon.
So we'll begin a Leon Black deposition soon, it sounds like. That's cool. That's something. But he pointed out that Epstein's accountant identified 5 clients who paid money to them. I'll repeat them for you guys. The Rothschilds. We have an additional confirmation coming straight from his accountant. Although we had the file that shows, $25 million, the whole contract, yada, yada. But, once again, another confirmation coming from his accountant, that the Rothschilds, also Les Wexner, which I know did we really need another node for that? Not quite. Leon Black, and then Glenn Dubin, number 4. So hopefully maybe they call him soon. I don't know enough about him, but I do know he is a billionaire, and he is the husband of, was it Eva Dubin? I forget her first name, but it was the ex-girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein. We talked about her a little bit yesterday, how she, the one Epstein file where she's seemingly offering up her teenage daughter to Epstein, it seems like. I mean, that's one way to interpret it. You can interpret it as, you could also interpret it as like, I have girls, I have my daughter and some of her friends are coming over, and I guess you could see that as like a, don't come over to spend time with them. Come to spend time with me. I need another adult or something. That's the only way, the best way I could spin it. But that's the husband, and who he's given money to Jeffrey Epstein. So I don't know. It'd be nice to hear from him. Seems like he'd be an important figure. And then also Stephen Sinofsky, which I'm not familiar with that name. So interesting. More. He's from Occupy Democrats. So filter it through with who you're getting it from. Says massive Jeffrey Epstein bombshell drops as the pedophile's personal accountant reveals that Epstein's estate paid off one of Donald Trump's accusers. Did the audio go through on that? I just realized it's showing the audio is not working, but I just want to make sure that wasn't. I think it just cut off. So no one's complaining, so we're good. All right, continuing. Occupy Democrats says this isn't a smoking gun; it's a smoking cannon. So to restate that, apparently the accountant that they interviewed, Richard Kahn, it revealed that Epstein's estate paid off one of Donald Trump's accusers. Now, to be fair, okay, let's finish reading this. Richard Kahn, who served as Epstein's accountant, testified before the House Oversight Committee earlier today. He worked with the billionaire predator for over a decade, offering him a unique insight into his shady operations and business practices. While more details will be released at a later date, Congressman Suhas Subramanian, Jesus Christ, that's a congressman's name? Okay, took to X to share his notes about the deposition. He revealed that Kahn mentioned 5 rich and powerful parties who bankrolled Epstein's operations: Les Wexner, Glenn Dubin, Stephen Sinofsky, the Rothschilds, and Leon Black. Kahn also mentioned former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak as having close financial ties to the pedophile. Now, this is Subramanyam, which I believe he's some sort of Indian god or something. I'm just kidding, obviously, but that name is ridiculous. Trump accuser has received money from the Survivor Fund managed by Khan. Guys like Khan enable billionaires like Epstein to get away with crimes. The other 99% of Americans couldn't. If Trump is innocent like that's the end of the quote, by the way. If Trump is innocent like he insists, why would his best friend Epstein being paid out money? Why would his best friend Epstein be paying out money to his accuser? The answer is obvious. Trump is a serial sexual predator and pedophile. The congressman went more into detail when speaking with reporters. This quotes, another person who was an accuser of Donald Trump was given a settlement by Jeffrey Epstein's estate. We did confirm that. He said, when asked for more details, he demurred and said that it would be best to wait for the release of the transcript. We wanted to confirm that certain accusers had received settlements, and he confirmed that, he explained. Says, we already know that Trump's name is all over the Epstein files, and he has been accused of heinous sexual abuse and rape. In one particular case, he was accused by a woman of sexually abusing her when she was only 13 years old. Her allegation was so credible that the FBI interviewed her 4 times. Pam Bondi's Justice Department tried to bury the interviews, but they were eventually uncovered. Enough is enough. An exhaustive investigation must be launched immediately, and this accountant must be forced to reveal everything that he knows. Here's the accountant in the center here. Kind of looks just like an accountant, but wild stuff. So let's repeat the quote to be very clear. Obviously, this is a very biased tweet coming from Occupy Democrats. But let's read the quote just so you guys know to strip away all the other bias in here. Let me see. Let's go back up. This is written by Subramanyam. I'm assuming, I haven't looked into this to full honesty to see if this was a closed door or open door thing. I think it was closed. That's why we're getting tell from it from people in the house or whatever, as opposed to video. Hopefully we'll get video soon. But once again, he says a Trump accuser. Never mind. Let's go. Never mind. This is a congressman. It says another person who was an accuser of Donald Trump was given a settlement by Jeffrey Epstein's estate. We did confirm that. So that's the quote here. We don't have it from Richard Kahn yet. Hopefully they do release the video if they haven't already, and we can check that. Maybe we'll cover that tomorrow or something. It says we wanted to confirm that certain accusers had received settlements, and he confirmed that. So once again, the congressman is saying that this accountant of Epstein confirmed with him that certain accusers received settlements, and one of the things that he confirmed was that one of the people who accused Donald Trump was given a settlement by Jeffrey Epstein's estate. So to be fair, maybe she's a serial accuser and Epstein's just paying out everybody and doesn't give a shit. So maybe she's so full of shit and it's not even the same accusation. Maybe maybe these are separate accusations. We don't know. I'm trying to find an out for Epstein here. Not that I really want to. I'm just trying to find a way to understand it without it being the worst. But it looks pretty bad. Looking like Epstein's paying off Donald Trump's accusers. It's looking like he may have fucked some kids. Let's be real. But let's keep it moving. Let's get into the hacking. That's what we're here for. Apparently, the Epstein files were hacked by a foreign spy 3 years ago after secret break-in at the FBI office. It's written by John Michael Rosh over at Daily Mail. The foreign hacker broke into the FBI's New York field office in 2023 and tampered with files relating to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, according to a new report. The hacker, whose nationality was not disclosed, reportedly broke into the FBI and gained access to government Epstein files on February 12th, 2023, Reuters reports. An investigation into the breach found the hacker had been combing through certain files pertaining to the Epstein investigation. A source familiar with the breach told the outlet that the foreign hacker appeared to have been a cyber criminal rather than a foreign government. They added that the breach occurred after a server at the Child Exploitation Forensic Lab in the FBI's New York field office was accidentally made vulnerable to infiltration. Special Agent Aaron Spivak was attempting to navigate the Bureau's complex procedures for handling digital evidence, report claims. The FBI refused to comment. Spivak did not immediately return the Daily Mail's request for comment. According to a timeline written by the agent, Spivak discovered his system was breached when he came into work on February 13th, 2023, the day after the hack, and found a warning that his network had been compromised. The timeline does not state what files were accessed, whether any data was downloaded, or the identity of the hacker. The FBI restricted access to the malicious actor and rectified the network, a spokesperson said in a statement. The investigation remains ongoing, so we do not have further comments to provide this time. Spivak reportedly told FBI investigators that he was being made a scapegoat for the intrusion and that poor information technology practices and communication were to blame for the breach. The source familiar with the incident told Reuters that the foreign hacker appeared not to know they had infiltrated a government server. The foreign infiltrator told the FBI officials they were disgusted that child abuse material appeared on their server. So this is funny. Apparently the foreign infiltrator has actually already been talked to, is what it sounds like. The hacker even threatened to turn the FBI official over to the FBI, the source said. That's okay. I'm kind of liking this guy. This guy is doing yeoman's work out here. FBI brass... So he's like, so it sounds like he's hacking, and he found this shit. It's like, what the fuck? And somehow the FBI got in contact with him. It's like, I should tell you about this shit. FBI brass eventually convinced the hacker that they were indeed a part of the bureau by inviting the hacker to join a video call on which they showed the perpetrator their law enforcement credentials. Okay, that's kind of wild. DOJ did not immediately respond to the Daily Mail's request for comment. It says, who wouldn't be going after the Epstein files if you're Russians or somebody interesting? Compromat John Lindsay, a Georgia Institute of Technology professor, told Reuters, if foreign intelligence agencies are not thinking seriously about the Epstein files as a target, then I would be shocked. The bombshell report comes the same week that investigators descended on Epstein's former New Mexico property called Zorro Ranch after DOJ files showed concerning reports that 2 foreign women were murdered there. The federal government asked New Mexico to stop their investigation, I believe, back in 2019 of that ranch. Said James Comer. We played that video yesterday. Republican and ally of Trump who was leading the Epstein inquiry said Tuesday. So there's just so many questions about how the government failed. The victims and how government failed in trying to prosecute Epstein sooner. I mean, this whole thing doesn't make sense. Zorro Ranch is roughly 30 miles south of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and is alleged to be a site of much wrongdoing. Self-proclaimed Epstein victims have alleged they were abused at the property. Shocking files in the recently released DOJ Epstein Trove claim, among other things, that 2 foreign women were killed during rough sex at the property and later buried at the site. Though the claims have come under much scrutiny, the person providing the tip later asked for Bitcoin as payment for their knowledge. God, what did I want to look at? And so this is like, I think this is the second time that we've had something like that. I know there was that other story where it was like a hack in like the Super Bowl or something. Let's look that up real quick. Actually, I'm just going to accidentally just Super Bowl Epstein, because I swear that it had something to do with that. I swear there was already an X and already a hack. My bad. Oh wait, is this the same one? No, this is February. Let's see. Is this February or is this more? No, this is more information about the same hack, I think. Yeah, actually, this is the same exact hack. Never mind. So it's not 2 separate hacks, because this was reported a couple weeks ago. But I guess now we have more. This is the same one from a couple weeks ago, to be very clear, that we talked about. But this is more information that we're getting now. So this is the one that they said like, isn't this the one they said like a shitload of terabytes disappeared or something? Erasing. So yeah, see right here. Here's Dom Lucre erasing up to 100 terabytes of data from evidence through the hack. So now this makes less sense now, since they supposedly got in touch with this guy. He seemed cool and, you know, kind of like, hey, what the hell is with this child porn? I should report you guys to the FBI. We are the fucking FBI. So yeah, weird. So this is more information about the Super Bowl hack, because this was on February 12, 2023. This was the night of the Super Bowl when this supposed hack occurred. So this is more information on that Super Bowl hack that a lot of you guys may recall. I thought this was a second one. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? But no, it's the same one. This is just more information about it. But I think you should always be a little bit cautious about the powers that be and how they move. For example, here's one example of this. Here's Ken Silva. Talking about Bruce Reinhart. It says, from the files, when former DOJ prosecutor Bruce Reinhart started working for Epstein, he was tasked with finding a woman who absconded from supervised release. He then tapped an inside source to locate her. It's unclear what happened next. So this is Bruce Reinhart, a former DOJ prosecutor who later worked for Epstein. And while he was working for Epstein, He was trying to find a woman who left supervised release, and he tapped an inside source. I mean, sounds pretty damn corrupt to me. Let me see. Let's look at these. 449. Okay, it's this order, I think. All right, these emails are sometimes weird to read. So it says, there's a federal absconder, redacted, white female, release date 5/14/2008. How do I find her probation officer? That's from Jeffrey Epstein to Bruce Reinhart. And the response is, you call me, I should have it by the end of the day. What Bruce says. Then Epstein responds with question mark. I'm assuming it was afternoon, so maybe he's bugging him, like, what the fuck? Where's the information? Here's another one, another email. It was between them. It says, my inside source is waiting to hear back. Oh, this is a response. My inside source is waiting to hear back from knowledgeable people. I will check again in the morning. Problem is that the conviction is out of New York, but we're trying to confirm where she was being supervised. I told them I thought it was out of Montana, but they needed to confirm. And then Epstein responded and said, no, it might be Arizona, Maricopa County. So now there's even more to this. Who is this Bruce Reinhart guy? Here he is. He is he is the judge who issued the warrant for the FBI raid on the Mar-a-Lago home in 2022. And he once worked for Epstein on his legal team. So, yeah. And during that time, when he was on the legal team, as I just pointed out, he was assisting Epstein to find someone on with a parole or whatever who left supervised release. Epstein, for whatever reason, was looking for them, and then Reinhart managed to hit some of his official people up and say, "Hey, what's going on?" So I don't know. That seems a little bit little corrupt to me. I don't feel like government employees should be doing such things. And more to this idea of kind of like, perhaps, I don't know, maybe there's more to all of this. Maybe it's not as simple as just like I don't know, this hack, or maybe there's an inside guy. Maybe there's more to this. Also kind of makes you wonder, what the fuck don't we know? Apparently Epstein was well aware of the differing levels of OPSEC when it comes to Gmail and other things. Looks like that wasn't his only email. I think people said he had like a Proton email or something, but he has multiple email accounts. It's only pretty much the Jeffrey Epstein vacation one or whatever the fuck that we mostly have. But here he is back in 2008, acknowledging that every email has looked at the government except privileged ones. So I just thought that was interesting. So a little casual reminder before we get out of here. Here is from Jeffrey to May Marsha. Says, still kicking Marsha. I don't actually do email. Don't feel loved. Oh, this is a Yahoo email. Don't feel unloved. I only do it for the case, and I hate it. Remember, every email is looked by the government except privileged ones. So here he is, aware. So it makes you wonder what's up on all those. If he's aware of this, what the fuck is on all these other emails that we don't have? What is he not willing to say? For example, there's one email that I don't think we've actually covered in the show. There's an email where he's talking to somebody and they're asking if he can get somebody out of a prison in Syria. But this is back when Assad was ruling the place. And he goes, not on email. And I don't remember what he said, to hit me up on something else or whatever. So he's aware. He is aware. He's aware that he needs to practice OPSEC. So, I mean, while there has been crazy things said in these emails, this is him practicing OPSEC. But it makes you wonder what was said in the other emails. And also, I think this does cast a little bit of doubt too on these convenient mistakes that occur elsewhere, like the one we just talked about, the hacking and stuff like that. So, but with that, guys, that's all we got for this Epstein information for today. We should be back tomorrow if I can scrounge up enough content for you guys. Around 11 a.m. Eastern, that's when we shoot for. We'll see if we make it tomorrow. We made it today. But with that, let's roll to the chat one more time. Say hello, big time. John Black says, Jose can't do a 10-hour Lex Fridman Scott Horton here. Fucking yeah, I can't. Good morning, GitHub says, I'm glad they are forced to reference Rothschilds. My buddy would call me crazy for even mentioning the name. Now he's like, fuck, you were right. Good morning, Black Eye. Good to see you here. Good to see you. Good morning, Marna Mac, saying when Americans can't even pronounce our congressmen's names, you know there's a little bit of a problem. Let me see. Let me see who else is in the chat. Good morning, Tara. Says you have to try to be able to fail. They didn't even try. Who else we got? Just because they're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't after you. So true, Queen. So true, Tara. Good morning, Elliot James. It's pronounced Maricopa. He misspelled it though. I thought it was too, but he put like a Marici, which would make it Siopa. So I'm like, I thought it was Maricopa. I've seen Maricopa elsewhere. I think he misspelled it. So that's Jeffrey's fault, not mine. All right, well, I think we're all caught up. I think I've said hellos to everybody. John Black says we have deep content holes. We for sure do. I think I should be able to scrounge up enough for you guys today. And I'm sure the world will provide with all the crazy news going on. But with that, guys, we're going to get out of here. For those who want to support this show, and I do have a fun little outro for you guys I think you'll like. And just a casual reminder, I do outros here for those who like to stick around for a little more goofy fun. It's not always goofy, sometimes educational, but with that, for those who want to support what I'm doing over here, leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. You can find the show on YouTube, Rumble, all the major audio podcatchers, and Twitter as well. That's at Tower Gang Jose. And if you want to support the show the best way you can do that with money. See right there, that QR code over at patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. There you get a whole host of perks at the low level of $2. They give you access to early episodes. They give you access to the ad-free RSS feed. They give you access to Telegram. Give you access to the pre-show, post-show, and video calls. Me and Austin's weekly live call-in show, Already Dead, which is on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. I also give a big shout-out to my sponsors, which is the highest level of my Patreon. It's a big thank you for their support. My previous co-host and Tower Gang at Learner Toad, also at Brigades, at ZAVRCK, at _InfiniteZeal, Tim Tull, at John Klebold, big fan of the show, Torn May, at Wayne Texas, One Here Car for Kids, No Free Lunch, Jack, Mark Vestibule, and Jacob Wintergrad, of the Biblical Anarchy Podcast. And with that, guys, we're going to get out of here. I hope you guys enjoy this goofy little outro. I love these AI slop nonsense. Here's another one with some key characters in today's world. Was it Leo DiCaprio? I think we got a little... George Floyd up in the mix here, some Jeffrey Epstein. This is, as the caption says here, this is why RAM is $900. If I knew what RAM was, I'd be really upset. I know some of you dorks out there do. I know AI does numbers on was it like fucking, I don't even know what RAM is. Isn't it like your storage on your computer or some shit? Whatever. I know it runs roughshod on that. So it's like kind of fucking up the whole computer game. But, in the meantime, as people are dealing with that, retards like me get to enjoy this AI slop. So I hope you guys enjoy this as well. It makes for some fun outros. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you all. Bye-bye.
Cocaine. Money. Fentanyl. Through the power of Fent, trap niggas can travel through different realms. He was here on a mission. He needed to make the Obama in this universe fat. It was the only option of stopping the Wiggers. He used his Fent-foo moves to steal a Hellcat to go find where Obama was located. He ended up finding his location through an Instagram post his daughter made. And now it was time to make Obama fat in order to save this universe.